Okay, I'm going to try to make a video about Henry David Thoreau once a week. And as best I could tell, Henry David Thoreau wanted to be a wild man, but not in the traditional way you would think. I was watching the movie Into the Wild, and I really do not like this movie. I think it's a very dystopian type movie. It's a hopeless movie. It gives no hope. And it seems to also give hope, which is quite amazing to me. But Into the Wild, I'm going to read the book because I think the book might be much more inspirational than the movie. But in defense of the movie, I don't think that you can tell people go and be wild, as Henry David Thoreau would have indicated or tried to get you to be. And the reason is this, is that society wouldn't be held together if everybody didn't obey society. But this young man in the movie, I'm going to try to move this back here. I'm trying to, a little too close. Okay, in the movie Into the Wild, he burns his money, he gets rid of all those savings, he graduates from university, and he changes his name to like Alex Supertramp or something crazy. And he becomes what I would consider in traveler jargon, a person that lost the plot, okay? He lost the plot. And then he goes up to the Yukon and he ends up dying in the Yukon. Not what I consider travel, but it is considered one of the most famous travel movies. But I consider it a really, more or less, a made for television, made for the not so wise people to watch, because it gives you all the idea of this wild and free man. And Henry David Thoreau talks about this in a few different quotes, but I've been reading his essay on walking. And as in his older age, see, he published Henry Walden, his most famous book, about 6 or 7 years after he left Walden Pond. And it's not really clear what's going on. But then he gave a lot of lectures. So I think as he got more mature, more adult, he wanted to be a lecturer, kind of like Ralph Waldo Emerson, because Ralph Waldo Emerson, for some reason, had money. And I think it was because he was a combination of an ex-preacher. You know, it's easy to make money when you're a preacher. Okay, people feel that they should support preachers, and in a way in my opinion, they should support philosophers and poets also. We need the art, and the art needs to be supported. But the verbal art of giving lectures is a different thing. But okay, so what's happening in the movie Into the Wild? It's a takeoff a little bit, not really sure, of Henry David Thoreau going off and doing your own thing, because that is essentially, as I understand it, and I don't empathize with this at all, the reason why people really relate to Henry David Thoreau is they figure that he was an individual that did anything he wanted to do, and he was a wild man. And I want to say that he definitely liked to use the term wild. In the book Walking, I will give you some quotes. So I would say, how near to good is what is wild? How near to good is what is wild? Life consists with wildness. The most alive is the wildest. The most alive is the wildest, not yet subdued by man. And I've talked about this in a few times. And a lot of people are what I call sanitized. Okay, their lives are, you know, they constantly want the sanitized version of life. They never want to say anything that would ever annoy a person. They never, pretty much is one big platitude, life is good, blah, blah, blah. And I feel that 95% of the people that are reading Henry David Thoreau's Walden are this person. And I really feel the wild one, okay? I was going to go to the Henry David, the Thoreau Society meetup in Concord in July 10th, and I decided not to. I became a member, but I'm not going because I'm the wild version. I'm the Henry David Thoreau version, not the domesticated version, okay? These guys are acting like going to the nature is the only thing that Henry David Thoreau stood for in a lot of ways. And to me, what he stood for is, I don't like the term nonconformist, but he didn't conform with society. He wasn't trying to be a nonconformist. He was just didn't conform with society. He went his own way. He was a man that went his own way. But these quotes in Walking are good. In the concluding chapter, chapter 18, in its conclusion, he kind of says what could have been the beginning paragraph of the book when he read the quote. Let me just read it here. Okay, where did it go to? Why should we be in such desperate haste to succeed in such desperate enterprises? And he talks about desperate quite a book in the book because he talks about society as being desperate. And I think most of the people that are falling in love with Henry David Thoreau's book, Walden, are living lives of quiet desperation. I'll say that again. I believe that 95 to 80, 98% of the people that read Henry David Thoreau's book, Walden, are in love with the idea that they're desperate and he's giving them a temporary reprieve from their desperation. They are not going and doing as he says. They're not being philosophers. They're not living the life. But in the movie, Into the Wild, the guy did exactly what maybe would have been Henry David Thoreau's thing. Go be your own person. And Diogenes, a very famous philosopher from like 400 BC, friend of Plato and these types of people, would again be a cosmopolitan, a global citizen. A global citizen is a person that says the valuation, my values are global. They are not tied to one country. They are more universal. And this is the transcendentalists also. The transcendentalists believe in a lot of ways, as I understand them. I haven't really researched transcendental that much, but they believe that we naturally, because of nature, we naturally understand what is right and wrong. But back to Henry David Thoreau being a wild man. So here in his quote, life consists of wildness. The most alive is the wildest, not yet subdued by man, not yet civilized, not yet sanitized, not yet trained, not set civilized. He's wanting people to go walking. In his essay on walking, what he's trying to do is say, walking is the only time when we have the, like we're in the right karma or the right spirit of understanding ourselves. To understand ourselves, we have to walk outside of society's things. I've lived outside of society's morals, norms, social constructs for over 26 years. I've lived in 114 different ones of these, and because they speak a foreign language, I don't really understand their rules. But I've developed my own culture, and I truly believe that this is simpatico with Henry David Thoreau. He's trying to say, be wild. What does that mean? It says, like, give you the energy of the force of a tiger, give you the force of a buffalo. Be a person that lives by what you say and what you're going to do. Say what you're going to do and do it. Don't be, in the Bible, they kind of say, let your yeses be yeses and your noes be noes. Right now in the United States, the whole culture is, I will say anything that will make you like me. That is the opposite of Henry David Thoreau. He's saying, follow your dreams, say what you believe in. It's not your job to fix the world. It's your job to live as a good example. But a wild man, what does a wild beast do? A wild beast goes and, they do what they want to do. If they want to go kill a buffalo and eat it, they eat it. He says, in walking, he says, when I would recreate myself, I seek the darkest wood. He's talking about the woods, the trees, and whatever. Somehow he finds diving into nature, the wildness of nature, is when he becomes a person that is clarity. He has serenity and clarity and solitude. I don't like the way he uses solitude, because I think the goal of life as a philosopher is to have an inner sense of solitude always, that is universally used in anywhere you're at. It's really easy to be a it's really easy to be a philosopher and a poet on Walden Pond by yourself. It's a whole other thing to have that type of serenity when you're surrounded by the meanness of society. See, in his second chapter, why he traveled and what I live for, or whatever, he says, I went to the woods to find out whether there was meanness. He talks about meanness, and he talks about the wild, and he talks about, in the walking thing, he talks about these tigers that are in India that come and steal people's bodies and go eat them. He doesn't, the way he writes is so poetic, you almost don't see or hear or read these things. You don't internalize. A lot of it's his first chapter, economy, is one big saying society's going the wrong way. And what he tries to propose is to be a wild man. To be a wild man that is untamed. There's a difference here. That isn't wild like the movie Into the Wild, where this guy was just insane. Okay, he was a man, in my opinion, that lost the plot, and it wasn't a travel video at all. It was really a man that lost the plot that traveled. Okay, this is kind of like a bum or a tramp or somebody that tries to live off of nothing and at the behest of society, not in congruency with society, not consistent with society, but saying, I'll do anything and everything I want to do. I will go into the wild. And this is what people, the 95% of my people that are desperate are doing, in my opinion. They are dreaming of being like Henry David Thoreau, fully aware that they're never going to do it. And this is the fantasy of Walden. It's the experiment. I want to go live in a cabin, a tiny cabin, blah, blah, blah. And they're never going to do it. They're just, because reality is much different than fantasy. But fantasy is really what people like to do. They like to dream of a life of being something that they are not. And very few people can live the life of Henry David Thoreau. Okay, but to recreate yourself, he says, when I would recreate myself. And this is what I want everybody to do, is to take a pause, a César, a moment in the music, stop it, take a pause, give yourself time to be who you want to be. Not who we want you to be, not society wants you to be, but to be wild enough to do that. Okay, this is a really interesting quote. This is kind of talking about travel in a very general sense, but I think it's absolutely, I related to it 100%. On re-entering cultivated lands, the agitation, perplexity, and turmoil of civilization oppressed and suffocated us. The turmoil suffocated us. The air seemed to fail us, and we felt every moment as if to die of asphyxia. What he's saying is, for a traveler that travels the world, goes everywhere, suddenly to go into a big city with thousands of laws, and every move you make is hazardous because the unpredictability of man is stifling, is suffocating. But people are so caught up in this civilization, domesticated. They are domesticated to walk on the sidewalk the way they're supposed to walk. They're domesticated to drive their car at a certain speed. Everything they do is domesticated, and they love it. They absolutely love going to work. They love to think that they have a job that makes a pile of money and they're doing exactly what society tells them to do. My one nephew went and got an MBA in Spain, and he was trying to give a lecture on, it's kind of sad because they were trying to talk about entrepreneurship, and they were all kind of trying to start these businesses. And I said to him, you know, an MBA is the last thing to do with entrepreneurs. If you take, you know, Elon Musk, you take Bill Gates, you take Steve Jobs, all these guys, all of them quit university. Most famous people in the history were self-educated people. They didn't prove that they were a good employee. An MBA is a person that says, I will prove over and over and over that I am a good employee. MBA stands for Masters of Business Administration. And that means I'm going to be a cog in the wheel of business. There is nobody more domesticated than a businessman working in a corporation. But for me, it's stifled. I've always been Again, I'll try to quote this. Why should we be in such desperate haste to succeed in such desperate enterprises? Okay, I just dropped the camera, and this table's at a slant, and the never-ending challenges of making videos in other countries. The noise is a continual problem. Let me see if I can finish up this video. And where's my smartphone? Okay, I'm Andy Lee Graham. I'm in Cañas Gordas, Colombia, and the coffee spilled all over my phone. Hope it didn't cause any problems. I'll try to go back to the file. A lot of people don't realize, but being a wild man means you're living in wildness. And I'm being a wild man, right? I'm in Colombia, trying to figure out what's going on with the Darien Gap. Here's another quote. If you would learn to speak all tongues and conform to the customs of all nations, if you would learn to speak all tongues and conform to the customs of all nations, if you would travel farther than travelers, if you travel farther than all travelers, if you would travel farther than all travelers. I highly relate to this. Be naturalized in all climates and cause a sphinx to dash your head against a stone. Even obey the precepts of old philosopher and explore thyself. So what he's trying to do is say travel for him is exploring yourself. And I believe this too. The only way you can truly travel is to explore yourself. It's a journey into your own mind, and it's the value of being a wild man. Henry David Thoreau was a wild person, and what I truly respect of him is even though he went to Harvard, he didn't get domesticated. He didn't get civilized. He didn't become a product of society. He became a product of his own mind. And this is the goal of life, right? A global citizen is a person that is a little bit of everything. A polymath. A polymath is a person that's interested in anything and everything. That is, to me, the goal of being a global citizen, to travel at all levels. It isn't to travel at an expensive level. It's not to travel at a poor. It's to be a little bit of everything. A global citizen is a person that is a little bit of everything. Henry David Thoreau was a wild man, not in the sense of Into the Wild where he was crazy. The guy was crazy. He lost the plot. And it's not a travel video. It's about somebody that just went off the rockers, right? And this is what people really want to do. They want to be like imbued with sin and anything they want to do. They want to be completely the opposite of obeying their father and mother. And at the end of the day, it's often, to me, just a terrible twos. Come to grips with your thing. I was watching this movie last night. It was really good, about Klondike, Yukon. And the woman says, I find that there's men that write their mothers and fathers, and there's men that don't. She's saying, I talk to the men that write their mothers, that have respect for the world. Not wild in the sense of you're going to die from it. But most people could care a rat's ass about being a good person. But it's crazy to make the world to not when you're not a good person, when you're not a global citizen, when you're not a polymath, what you do is you make a world that you don't want to live in. Make a world you want to live in. I'm Andy Lee Graham. I'm in Kanye's Gorgeous, living the life I want to live. Dropping my coffee. Andy Lee Graham, I'm here and you're not. Why not?